Politics in the United States of America. The left has gotten really left, and the right has gotten really right. Everyone's towing the line, and we're getting nowhere. Fast. This is the Rational American. The Rational American. Common sense has gone out the window, and our passion is to open eyes in hopes that people will take a rational look at what America is actually becoming. Put your feelings aside and let's get real. This is the Rational American, and this is your host, Steve Oatley.
Well, what's going on, everybody? Welcome. I'm sunburned all the hell. You want to see? Look at that from yesterday. Super sunburned. Anyway, welcome to the Rational American. I don't do shows on Saturday typically. I don't do shows over the weekend unless we have some like breaking news or something. But I think the level of importance of what we're going to talk about is pretty important. You know, many of you guys have been watching my show over the past week, and you've seen, let's just say, a little bit of frustration, right? So I've had a little bit of frustration with these so-called patriot groups that have been going after veterans, whether directly, indirectly, whether it was whether they were intentionally doing it or not, doesn't matter. That was what was going on. We saw it first with the 1776 Restoration Movement members, attempting to clog up the VA phone lines. We consistently see it all over the place, and now we're seeing something happening which mainstream media doesn't seem to be paying attention, except the left wing. Left-wing mainstream media is paying attention to this too. But I think it's important for me to talk about it because I have to. It's something that's been on my mind a lot today. This J.R. Majewski stuff and everything that's going on with this guy. And let me explain. I do have a personal bias in this because I've met J.R. Majewski and I think he's a great guy. Just in terms, we don't endorse political candidates, on our show or anything, but I think he's a really good guy. We were with his campaign giving out free coffee in Youngstown a week ago today, and I've met him and I like him. On the 21st, the AP wrote an article, and if you even want to call it an article, I don't know the best way to describe it because it's a hit piece. So the AP published this article, and of course the AP, everyone that subscribes to the AP then republished this article a million times. Politico then reported on it. Fake-ass journalists with the Huffington Post who are probably watching this video on Twitter suck ass, but they probably wrote about it. Other people have written about it. People have been sharing. So the thing that's the most concerning to me is that nobody's actually doing any fact checking on this story. And so let me find the actual story just so I can read from the beginning. So AP News, this is the headline of this story. And someone said it's a hit piece for the Democrat Party. No, it's not. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why it's not a hit piece for the Democratic Party, because the people that are behind this hit piece are Republicans and they are rhinos. And I'll talk about that in just a second, but just bear with me a second. Ohio GOP House candidate has misrepresented military service. That is the title of this article. So let me give a little bit of background because I know we have a lot of veterans that watch this show. And if you would be so kind, only reply to this if you're a veteran in the chat. if a man, an Air Force guy, deploys to a Qatar in 2002, many of you guys know September 11th, 2001, within a week, 6 days, we had special forces operators on the ground in Afghanistan. Qatar was a central command for everything that was going on in Iraq and Afghanistan as well. In 2002, May of 2002, Air Force battalions were coming in, right? So say you work, and this is a question for all the veterans out here, only veterans, please. Say an airman ships off there. He's providing material support to the aircraft, to the troops, potentially doing missions to Afghanistan, where he's unloading planes, unloading troops, unloading supplies, loading back up and leaving again, where we have an active war. Would you consider that person to be a combat veteran? Press 1 if yes, 2 if no. And again, only if you're a military veteran. Would you consider the person that is providing material support and physical support to someone or to the military as part of Operation Enduring Freedom, would you consider them a combat veteran? Because I have now spoken to 2 military people who spent numerous years in the military, numerous deployments overseas, and guess what? Both of those people, without any of the actual information regarding who the person is, both of them said that they would consider them combat veterans, one of which had a really impassionate response because he's like, as soon as I told him what happened, he's like, this has been going on for years where they attack. So look at the chat. For everybody that's in the chat, and especially the left wings and stuff, right now, virtually everybody that has prior military service in our chat right now, and we have several hundred people watching, it's a sea of ones. Because everybody, prior military, believe that if you're over there and you're doing deployments, you're doing missions into Afghanistan, whether or not you have a 30-day consecutive boots on the ground in that country, you are still a combat veteran because nobody knows what happened. Nobody knows if your planes were getting shot at. Nobody knows that. Everyone's talking about Air Force. So I'll calm down. So this is what's transpired with J.R. Majewski, right? In May of 2002, he was deployed to Qatar. The AP reported, and what they reported, which they received back in July, which is kind of interesting, but they reported getting this document from the Air Force. It says the releasable information, this is from Michael Dickerson, and they weren't supposed to release this information, which is why I'm not showing it on social media. It literally says it's confidential and you're not allowed to show it, but whatever. So hopefully they get sued for that. But it says that he had, as far as overseas deployments go, we show one deployment to Qatar in May of 2002 to November of 2002. What he did or where he may have went from that location, we have no visibility on. So what the AP did is they said, okay, his deployment was to Qatar, and it doesn't matter that he was flying missions into Afghanistan. They wrote this article besmirching an Air Force veteran who served this country because he wasn't deployed directly to Afghanistan. He was deployed to Qatar and was, handling transports and all the other stuff that happened. What's interesting is this article goes on to just slam the guy. And I encourage everybody to flag and talk to mainstream media and all that stuff. Campaigning for Northwestern Ohio congressional seat, Republican J.R. Majewski presents himself as an Air Force combat veteran who deployed to Afghanistan after the 9/11 attacks, once describing tough conditions, including a lack of running water, and that forced him to go 40 days without a shower. And then it goes on to say military documents obtained by the Associated Press through a public records request tell a different story. They, in fact, do not tell a different story. Now, what the AP is hoping is that you're not going to do even the slightest bit of due diligence, right? What they are hoping now is that you're going to look and say, well, the AP, a credible news organization, has said that he didn't serve, so we're just all going to pretend like he didn't do it, that he didn't go overseas. They're trying to say he's not a combat veteran. They cite someone in here. Well, actually, I'll say this. And then it says they indicate Majewski never deployed to Afghanistan, but instead completed a 6-month stint helping to load planes at an airbase in Qatar, which it doesn't, all the same documents. I have all the documents. It doesn't say anything about him loading planes or anything else, but that was his MOS. So they're, just drawing conclusions there. It's not like you get reassigned. Tell that to my family. It's not like you get reassigned when you go over and your MOS changes based on needs, but whatever. And I'm not saying that what happened to JR, but they're just pretending like they know all. It says Majewski's account of his time in the military is just one aspect of his biography that is suspect. And then they attack his credibility with the nuclear stuff, which doesn't make any sense because when you actually look at the data, what they're doing is they're picking small parts of his nuclear background and all that. And I'm not even going to talk about that. I'm only going to talk about the military thing because to me, this is the most egregious out of everything. They, let me see where they cite this person. So they cited this guy named Don Christensen, a retired colonel and former chief prosecutor for the Air Force. He said, "It bothers me when people trade on their military service to get elected to office when what they're doing is misleading people they want to vote for them." Now, Don Christensen, so of course I started looking into everybody, all these fake ass journalists that have been contacting me on Twitter, all of these people, because I've been outspoken about this over the past couple of days, ever since this broke on social media, because clearly there's shit missing, but everyone's reporting it as fact. Everyone is reporting on biased opinion as fact, which we know if you pay attention to the media and all that stuff, we know that. We know that. There's bias in media, but the problem is that mainstream media is now reporting bias as fact, and people are consuming it and believing it. And that's the problem. That's the major problem that we have here in America with journalists. And every single journalist that sent me a message, I say, how about you just practice a little bit of integrity? Actually look it up. So this guy, Don Christensen, right? So I looked him up and he is a decorated Air Force, JAG officer, all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. He's also a big time political donor. Now, at first, when I looked at the nonprofit that he runs, which is called Protect Our Defenders, I looked into the nonprofit for political contributions, and I didn't find much about that. But I did, however, find something that doesn't seem very conservative, to say the least. And nonprofits are supposed to be nonpartisan, right? That's at least the goal, or that's what they're supposed to be. But according to how come this is frozen again? Damn, man, why does it do that? There. So according to this, which is Protect Our Defenders, this is one little thing that they have. They wanted people to take a pledge. They're asking presidential candidates to put military justice in the hands of professionals. Look at what they got here. Joe Biden, Donald Trump. Donald Trump obviously didn't do it. And then all of the candidates. Can you tell me one common theme about all of these candidates? All of them? All of them? I'll continue on. Can you tell me what the common theme is between them all? Right? Nonprofits are supposed to be nonpartisan, but they very rarely are, right? But again, and he's Don Christensen, the retired Air Force decorated law JAG officer and all that stuff. He's the president of this Protect Our Defenders organization, and they're doing good work. I'm not criticizing the organization at all, but I looked into the financial contributions of Don Christensen, and I was pretty surprised because I was expecting Don Christensen's financial contributions to be all Dem, all blue, right? That's what you would think. But no, actually, when you look into his contributions, they are all Republican. In fact, he's maxed out his contributions so far over the past year, I believe. Without doing some very basic math, I believe he's already maxed out his contributions, but he is a rhino and he does win red and he does the National Republican, whatever, maxed out his political contributions to all Republican PACs. It's kind of weird. So you're saying, okay, so they quoted a Republican, right? This guy won the Republican primary in Ohio's 9th district to win. There's been all sorts of money issues going on in Ohio anyway, where the Ohio GOP is apparently not releasing funds that have been raised on the backs of these candidates to the individual candidates. Instead, they're selectively deploying money elsewhere. That's a story for another day. But the thing that's the most concerning to me is that it seems that this is an effort by the AP and by Republicans to stop the campaign of J.R. Majewski. That's literally what it appears to me. And obviously, and they're just handing the win to the Democrat, that the incumbent there, Marcy, whatever her name is. See, I censored myself there. You're welcome. So this guy, Don Christensen, who's quoted in the AP article as saying, well, it really bothers me when people trade on their military service. Veterans have done so much for this country. When you claim to have done what your brothers and sisters' arms actually did to build up your reputation, it's a disservice. Now, let's be honest. We can give this Don Christensen the benefit of the doubt, right? Again, highly touted Air Force colonel, all this stuff, testified before Congress, yippee, like really good guy, obviously donates a shit ton of money to the Republican Party. But why would he talk shit about a Republican primary guy when he actually probably has access to way more information than we can get just by his contacts in D.C.? He still made a comment talking about someone else's military record without any actual evidence to disprove someone's military record, which is the craziest thing to me. So we already know that based on Majewski's own statements, he said he did 6 or 7 missions. I forgot what he said in his press release from Qatar into Afghanistan with his team, all that. We know that. That's and there's nothing to disprove that because the only evidence that we have that actually occurred was from Majewski's mouth because everything else is apparently classified. We know that. I have documents that I can't release because I was told I can't release them, but I have documents that were sent that prove the deployment, but it doesn't matter. You know, people just want to continue lying. They went as far, further than that. Other left-wing rags started writing, that his story of getting noticed when he was overseas in the desert, right? So this is another one that pisses me off. How many of you guys know what Qatar, the base, in Qatar, there were 2 bases, depending on which one he was at. How many of you guys, especially the veterans in the chat, know how many of the veterans in the chat were over in Qatar in 2002 and know about the condition of the base and know that most of the construction crews and everything that were going there, all the engineers, whatever, from the Army and the Air Force and all the people that build up all the tents and build up bases and all that really fast. Many of those guys started arriving just around the same time as Majewski did, right? So in early 2002, according to news reporting, they had one big ass tent that was set up, and that was essentially the base and one runway. And then they started laying down concrete and trying to build it all up so more aircraft could go because it later became Central Command. That's all done. We know it's in the middle of the desert. So his statements of spending 40 days in the desert when, in the beginning of 2002, the airbase there was in the desert. It still is in the desert, even to this day. But people are still pretending like, well, he meant desert as Afghanistan because that's what they believe he meant. It's like mainstream media saying, sources familiar with the people's mindset. It's the same thing. What we see going on now is probably the most blatant partisan. And when I say partisan, because to me, it's the only people that are responsible for this seem to be Republicans for taking down one of their own and attempting to take him down and pulling back ad spend and all this stuff, which is insane to me. It's insane. And the fact is that I expected last night to have any of the late night people on Fox News talk about it. I expected it because I was like, there's no way they're not going to talk about how the rhinos have turned against, a Trump endorsed candidate that's running for office and has the potential to win, has a lot of wind beneath his sails. Even with all the adversity and everything that's happened to this candidate, he seems to be doing very well. And yet everybody's silent. The only thing, when you search his name, you only find negative shit. You even got Eric Swalwell calling him stolen valor, hashtag stolen valor. All of these people are out there doing it. You got Ruben Gallego or whatever the fuck his name, the dumbass congressman that, thank you for your service. You're still a shithead. Not your veteran status, but you as a person, you're just a scumbag. That guy's also calling him stolen valor, calling him a cowardice and scumbag and all that stuff, saying that he misrepresented his service without even looking into it, without even knowing what happened. They said, Majewski on a podcast one time said his grandmother died, right? And his grandmother died and he received notice. And then one news article said that was false. So Majewski actually had to go on his Twitter page and release the letter that he received when he was overseas, saying that his grandmother died. And it's a government, when your family member dies, apparently the government the military has specific procedures. Like you got to be accompanied by a chaplain when you give the news. The person that you're notifying has to call the Red Cross, all that stuff. The actual document's been released and it doesn't even matter. They said he was ineligible for release or for re-enlistment, which is false. You know how it's false? Because he released the document saying he's eligible for reenlistment. In fact, they wanted to reenlist, and then he had to follow this process. Otherwise, he'd become ineligible for reenlistment, which is what you do if you don't want to reenlist, I guess. I was never military, so I don't know. But I have the article, the actual letter from the chief, and I forgot what it is. I wrote it down somewhere, and I was pissed. From the chief officer. They repeatedly lie. And the fact is that nobody is paying attention. Mainstream media right now is just turning away, or they're reporting on it if they're on the left. All these verified check marks all over Twitter are just retweeting it. And it doesn't even matter, even when you disprove them and say, hey, listen, clearly he was there. Based on the evidence that's there, you can just Google what was transpiring in Qatar in May of 2022, and you will learn that Air Force was transporting troops, transporting gear, transporting armaments, transporting everything as they were building these expeditionary bases all throughout Afghanistan. That is known based on the news reporting. So you're telling me not one single mainstream media news reporter actually decided to do their job, and they all regurgitate this? And then we're not even at the point where I had one reporter with the Huffington Post said, even if this is all true, why would the GOP, pull back this based on what the words from the AP? You would think that they must find it super credible. I'm like, it's the GOP. It's the GOP. Nobody believes them. I don't believe them. I'm a conservative. I was a Republican voter. I don't believe the GOP. I've never even given money to the GOP. Why? Because they are not real conservatives. They are not. This whole deal that they put out, Kevin McCarthy yesterday, is bullshit. And everybody else that signs on to it, it's all bullshit. And everybody knows it's bullshit. It's just an effort to win the midterms. And then more of the same is going to happen all the time. This to me is one of the and I already said it once, it's one of the most blatant attempts to mess with an election ever. Someone said, was Qatar ever a combat zone? You didn't get hostile fire pay in Kuwait. I don't know if you did with Qatar, but according to the military sources that I had, say you do a mission, right? And you go into Afghanistan, you spend a night in Afghanistan, even if your base comes under fire and all that stuff, but then you leave and you go back to Qatar where you're assigned, you don't get combat pay. You don't get any of that stuff, according to the vet that I spoke to. And trust me, that vet, I believe everything he says. You know what I mean? But that's what he said. And he said that's been a big issue because they were sending people for 20 plus days. They're not getting combat pay. They're not getting any ribbons. Everyone's like, how come you didn't get a combat medal? Because they didn't even issue the fucking medals until 2007. Everybody can look it up. Everybody can look it up. And if you're eligible for one of these medals, which you became eligible for any action and deployment overseas from September 11th, 2001, beyond until the first one was given out in September of 2007, you could file the paperwork and get it out. He was already out of the military. He left the military in 2003. So everyone's like, well, he doesn't have this medal. He didn't serve in combat, blah, blah, blah. Nobody can do any basic research anymore. And I know I talk about this all the time. I talk about it with the mass shootings. I talk about it with everything. Mainstream media has an obligation. I told the one journalist with the Huffington Post, I'm like, you have a responsibility as a journalist just to report on facts. It's not to report on opinion. It's because these are just facts that are provable. You can't base an article like the AP did on a bunch of misinformation or a bunch of biased opinions or a rhino colonel that says, well, I can't tell by looking at his paperwork if he's seen. It really upsets me when people misrepresent their thing. This guy has donated so much money to the Republicans. Are you telling me that there's no correlation between this? That this Don Christensen, a retired colonel and former chief prosecutor for the Air Force, who's donated thousands of dollars to rhinos, and then the rhinos pull out $600,000 of ad spend on Majewski the very same day the AP drops this big bomb, apparently, that everybody talks about. The craziest thing is that, I reached out to people and said, and I don't know if they're going to watch this later, but I reached out to people and said, you have to hire a PR team. And I tell you, if you're using a friend or a volunteer as your PR, you got to fire them or get rid of them, say, sorry, no thanks, and spend whatever campaign money you have now to go and get a real PR team, because we should now be looking and see a flood of responses We should see a flood of responses. We should see a flood of TV appearances, because what's going on now is it's stewing in everyone's mind. It's stewing in everyone's mind. You do a little shitty press conference, right? You do a little shitty press conference where you answer one question, you leave more questions by your answer to that one question, and then you walk off and you don't answer any questions. It doesn't make any sense. I don't understand that. I don't understand why they're not on mainstream media. And I'll be honest, if the reason they're not on mainstream media is because mainstream media won't have them, then you should document every single time. Every single time someone says that they're not going to let you come on their network, it should be made public every single time. It's the craziest story. It's the craziest story to me. Because no matter what, they know these authors with the AP, this Brian Stelesco and James Laporta, they knew that when they were publishing this, they're publishing an article based on conjecture, based on biased opinion, not at all based on fact. Not at all based on fact. And they did it anyway. And literally what they did, and they do it with everything he did. They did it with his nuclear, experience working in nuclear companies, saying, well, he wasn't an executive. He just had sales calls with an executive. He wasn't an executive here. Or his LinkedIn profile says he was an operations manager. Fucker, that is an executive. But they just, it's disgusting. And people pass on this, and now they're going after him. He's getting death threats. His families are getting death threats. His campaign staff is getting death threats. And you know what the best part is? Previous veterans that have been talking to him, previous veterans that serve with him, previous veterans that are defending him are also getting death threats. Other political candidates that served overseas are getting death threats. It's insane. It's insane. And it's not going to stop. You know why? Because no one's going to actually go out there and do anything right. I feel that. I hope he does fundraiser after fundraiser and makes a shit ton of money off this, and then is able to take that seat. And I sent them a message and I said, when you do win, I want to be at your victory party, whatever. But it's wrong. It's wrong, because they are right now. And we have this new pattern in America where it's apparently fair game. If you don't like the person politically, it's apparently fair game. You're allowed to go after someone based on political belief rather than fact. You can just make shit up. We know that. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting. And everybody should be ashamed. If you are one of the Twitter people and you happen to be watching this, you're one of those verified accounts. Like there's one guy, I forgot what his name was, Fred something, a verified Twitter account, No, wait, I just pressed a button. Pressed a button on that. Verified Twitter account. Fred Wellman, 22 years service, multiple tours and all that stuff. It didn't matter what evidence we were talking about. It didn't matter that the re-enlistment thing has been debunked. It didn't matter that the grandmother story has been debunked. It doesn't matter that he was eligible for re-enlistment. None of that mattered to this person. The only thing that matters is that, it's stolen valor. The AP says. The AP says. And that guy's got 250,000 followers, and he keeps doing it. Eric Swalwell. He knows, and he probably knows too. He's on the intelligence committee. You're telling me that he couldn't have looked up this entire file already and know exactly where he went? The guy's got clearance. He could have known every single thing about it. The thing that's craziest is that it seems almost that Republicans and rhinos made a decision that they'd rather have a Democrat take that seat than have someone that doesn't align with their values. Meaning a MAGA conservative or someone that truly cares about America. Doc Vernon said, JR never served in a combat zone. You don't know that, because the only evidence that's been provided there's been and here's the craziest thing, right? We all know he was deployed to Qatar in 2002. Based on the FOIA document that the AP received from the Air Force, they would not go into what he did during that deployment. So the only person that provides any context into what they did during that deployment was the person that is coming into question. So what everybody is doing is they're saying, okay, the person who was there What they're saying is not true. The people who were not there and have no actual information about this scenario are the ones that get to make up the story. And that's who you're all following. Doc Vernon, that's who you're following. You know, Doc said, I'm a vet, Steve, per my SF forces. He's not legit. Well, unless you send me those SF forces, then you don't have permission to write that bullshit in my chat, because you're just spreading misinformation just like everybody else. Until I actually see something concrete on paper that says that this isn't true, I choose to believe him. I've met him. I've shook his hand. I choose to believe what he said over the idea that it didn't happen, because there's no facts that it didn't happen. It's only an idea. It's not even an idea. It's an opinion that it didn't happen. An opinion that's not at all based on fact, which is the craziest thing to me. And please respect my chat. I don't want people writing shit that is not based on fact, especially when we're talking about someone who's getting death threats because of this attack. You know, Jump Short Clip said, let me fight you to the death. Come on, bro. Let's do it. Someone said, infantry get the CIB. I was 31K and got CAB. Yeah, I don't know. Someone said, how do you prove a negative? By proof. That's how you, so how do you disprove what he's saying with proof? You don't disprove what someone's saying by saying, nah, I just don't, it didn't happen. That's not how you do it. You have to prove that it didn't happen. Does that make sense? And what the AP did is they sowed all this doubt to everybody without any fact at all. Look at it. Look at it. You know, some icy bird moron said he's see, this is the thing, because this is funny. This person called him a rhino. So he doesn't even know who he is. He doesn't even know who he is or what he stands for or anything, because he is hardly a rhino. But it doesn't matter, because that's what people are trying to say. Ruth Saunders said Qatar is where people went to R&R and to wait for flights into the zone. Yeah, but where do you do that when you're actually when it's a command center and at the beginning of the war? We're talking May 2002. Before it was all built out. This is before they put the pool in and all that shit. This is before all that. Everybody knows that based on the simple timeline. That is a fact. The time he was there was before they did all the other stuff. That is a fact. So you can say that's where they went to do R&R and all that stuff later in the war. You don't know what they did at that time. The only people that do are the people that do a fucking tiny bit of Google research and find out what that base condition was in May of 2002. Then you know the truth. The only person, and for anyone that wants to say, well, the planes weren't flying into Afghanistan, you're a moron, because they were every day, dozens of flights were flying in and out of Afghanistan every day, because Qatar, the base there was two bases there. Both of those bases were as Central Command. They were Central Command for the war in Afghanistan, Operation Enduring Freedom, and then Operation Freedom, Iraqi Freedom, or whatever that transpired later on. Someone said, Steve, it's not an opinion. They are making accusations with no evidence. To me, it's defamation of character and he should be sued. Yeah, and a lot of it, and I've said that about libel. Like, I think he would have a case. I'm not a lawyer at all. And people would say, oh, well, because the thing about libel, when you're a public figure, you have to prove that it caused you financial harm. It caused irreparable damage to you. Clearly, this did. He's getting death threats. That's all he needs. Take those and show. Where his family's got to hide, his campaign has to hide. It's just crazy. Someone said, take a deep breath. The only thing they have is lying. Yeah. Someone else, college kid, said he's just mad another one of his MAGA politicians. See, here's the thing. I'm not like a MAGA guy. And that's what everybody always tries to say as some sort of justification for all of this stuff. What I am is a rational American that is capable of free thought. The people the person that said that, the college kid that can't spell college right, that kid that said that, he's not someone that is able to examine or to say free thought. He's just not able to. So instead he has to go, oh, he's just mad, a MAGA politician, this and that. That's what they all turn back on. The reason why I do this is what the reason why I do this show every day is because people have to see things. Someone said, if you have proof he's been in combat, show it. If not, all you're doing is blowing hot air. Show your proof. The United States military has shown their proof. What proof has the United States military shown? They showed a deployment in 2002 from May until November of 2002 to Qatar. That's the only thing they showed. There's nothing else that the military has shown to do it. Other people are saying, release your photos, because he can't talk about his individual trips and the days they went there because it's classified. That's apparently what's going on. Why is it that so many people, when you're presented with non-evidence, when you're presented with conjecture, that you just automatically believe it? That's the thing to me that smells so bad here. You know? What proof is there that he was in combat? The fact that he said he did missions. There's no other proof. There's no other proof. And for anyone that wants to say, well, that's not a valid argument. All right. Say you're sitting in your home, right? You're sitting in your home. You go open your door and you go out in your front yard and some guy runs at you with an axe, right? And you shoot that guy dead. Someone else comes and steals the axe. The police, you know what happened that day. Imagine if everybody just locked you right up in jail and said, you're guilty. You're guilty, because that's exactly what they're doing to this guy. Even though the facts, we know there was an axe. We know that because that's the story I just told. But everybody else is just like, nope, you shot him. You're done. You're going to jail for the rest of your life. It didn't matter. He was running at you with an axe. Those are not things we can prove. The axe is not here. So you're just guilty. Do you understand how fucking dumb and dangerous that way of thinking is? It's insane. It's insane. There's some things on military that they don't put on DD-214s for security reasons. That's why not anyone DD-214. Roger Mello said he would have gotten a ribbon for it. No, he wouldn't. For one, you wouldn't get a ribbon unless you did 30 consecutive days. And secondly, they didn't start giving out the ribbons until 2007. He would have had to petition it. He was already out of the military by then for 3 years. You would have had to petition for it. And everybody can look it up. It's fucking Air Force Combat Action ribbon. Everyone can look up that shit. That's why it's so easy. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to do it. You know? OMFUG. Man, I'm seeing a lot of common names in here. I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat that are showing that they don't give a shit about this country right now. Frankly, that you don't believe in the election integrity, that you don't believe in actual real news. You don't believe in facts. You just believe in what someone says, which is crazy to me. Not everybody, but I'm seeing a lot of familiar names. EJC said exactly. That's why 2 of my hubby's deployments aren't listed. And then Leonard Harvey said they put it all on DD-214. Sometimes it's in the form of a code number you have to send off to get verified. They put all what? It's not if it's not a deployment. So let me ask you this. Anyway, and I'm not military, so I have no idea. So what you are telling me, whoever just wrote that. So what you're telling me, if he's on a 6-month deployment to Qatar, right, and which we know that's verified from May of 2022 or 2020 or 2002. To November of 2002. If he gets on a flight, as part of his job, flies into Afghanistan, drops people off, gets, loads up whatever they're doing, gets back on the flight and flies back to Qatar, even though he was only there on the boots on the ground, let's say an hour, right? So you're telling me that would be on the DD-214. That's what people are telling me. That's what people in the chat are saying. That every single time that Air Force soldier gets on, are they still called soldiers? Air Force person. You're telling me that every single thing. So every time they go and take a shit, it's going to be documented on that DD-214. Doc Venom said 100%. So Doc, you are a troll. So that's very clear because I know for a fact that it wouldn't go that way. Air Force Airman, that's what it's called. Someone said the ribbon was also given to service members in a battle situation, but not stationed within the combat zone. Yes, again, but look at the date of the ribbon. The first ribbon was given out in 2007, and they were retroactive all the way to the first. You had to petition. Remember? Come on, guys. Where's your questions here? You agree every time that you jump on a plane while you're deployed to Qatar, we know that. So I'm asking the military people here. You would know this, right? Because you all have DD-214s from when you left active service. You know that your DD-214 for every flight that you went from, say, Camp Pendleton to a different base, that is marked. Even though you were assigned to Camp Pendleton and you went to a different base for something, it shows that on your DD-214, doesn't it? It does. Yeah, I bet it doesn't really. But that's what everyone is trying to say. Military Outlaws said he may have only flown into combat zones for a few hours at a time and unloaded and loaded supplies, troops, etc. He still served in a combat zone. He's still a combat veteran. Yeah, according to every single combat person I've talked to. Someone said, no, it does not. Yeah, no shit. That's the point. So everyone is trying to say he didn't serve in Afghanistan. Even by his own admission, he went to Afghanistan. He did missions into Afghanistan. I think he said 6 to 7 missions into Afghanistan, a mission would be when you're, say, your commanding officer says, hey, you're going to load up this plane, you're going to take it over there, and you're going to drop off all the lumber or troops or tanks or armament, whatever. And then you're going to fly back. That's a mission in there. So you're telling me he's less, providing support for the people that are on the boots on the ground there fighting? You're saying he's valued less than that? The people that are supplying those people? Tell that to someone who actually served over there. Someone said, to the part that he went somewhere overseas, there would have been orders to accompany it. Yeah, but orders aren't reflected on DD-214s, right? Especially if those orders are classified. They certainly are not. Someone said there are no active orders to show he was deployed to AUKUS, which is required for any kind of benefits, insurance, and medical clearance. Yeah, again, if he was in Qatar and he was doing daily missions to Afghanistan, and try to make the argument that they weren't doing daily missions out of Qatar. Try to make that argument. That will be the next thing they said, is that all the troops out of Qatar that were flying into Afghanistan, all of those troops, they weren't actually flying there. They were flying from there to France and then going down. Doc Venom said, I was deployed. You're missing the point. He was deployed to Qatar, not to Afghanistan. If you fly. So here's a question. When you were in Afghanistan, did you ever fly out for anything? Did you ever fly to Qatar per se? Any of you guys? Because this is a question. I'm not military, so I have no idea. But this is a real question. If you're in Afghanistan, say you were at one base and you had to go to another base in northern Afghanistan, and you went to that base, is that going to be documented on your DD-214? And if it's not, then that's exactly what you're saying. Rainbow Bright's evil twin. You got to send me an email, social@citizenstringer.com. I'll go on any show that I can. Not today, Monday, but social@citizenstringer.com. I'm done saying no to going on other shows. I'll go on every show. My husband is 100% DAV. He's a veteran, blown up refueling aircraft. All you naysayers can kiss that DD-214. Someone else said a DD-214 will show the country of deployment and the length of time you were there. It won't show everything in between. I may or may not have set foot in Syria in 2009, but it doesn't show on my DD-214. But again, and so we know now by the poll in the beginning of the show, we know that almost all of the veterans that were in this chat, all of the veterans believed, based on the scenario, Majewski's scenario, that he's a combat veteran by definition, based on their definition of what a combat veteran is, based on that scenario. So if in fact he did actually even step foot in Afghanistan doing what he said he did, then he would that whole argument would be gone. We know the grandmother thing was disproven. We know he was eligible to re-enlist. The paperwork is there. It's posted on his Facebook or his Twitter page. And we know never mind. And we know other things. We know he was honorably discharged from the military. He posted the certificate. We know all of that information. The problem is, so someone said they issue travel orders. Yeah, no shit. We're talking about DD-214s. Would that be listed on your DD-214? You know? Someone said he could get his folder, but how is he going to do it? They asked for his comment a few hours before they released this video or before they released the AP News article. How is he going to get all the information to verify all of the allegations that are made in this? And that's why he's slowly doing it now via Twitter. Someone else said husband was in Grenada before it was a conflict, was classified as paperwork. Doesn't say he was active, but he was. Military Outlaws said DD-214 would not reflect combat flights into and out of Afghanistan or any other combat zone. It doesn't mean he isn't a combat veteran. Does anyone realize the risk of flying in and out? No, because here's the thing. Most of the naysayers are not actual military. Most of the people that are talking about it and they're criticizing him, one, they're Democrats that have a bias against anybody that's Republican, or two, they're not military, so they don't understand. And they're just reading these news reports and being like, he lied. He lied. You know what I mean? It's like, imagine that. If someone said, hey, Steve, it's sunny outside. You know it's cloudy. You could see it with your own eyes that it's cloudy, but you're still like, you know what? It's sunny. Because so-and-so said it was. That is what people are doing now. You have evidence to disprove the AP report, and it doesn't matter. People are still blinded by it and saying, well, you know what? We're going to not believe it happened, which is, to me, it's crazy. He's not a pilot. Someone said his orders would list everything. Again, we're talking about 2002. The orders are not going to be released by the government. We already know the information that's been released. We already know. We already have all the information that's been released. And then we have some other information as well. It's sad. It's sad that so many people, he can request his military file. Yes, I understand that. And we've already talked about that too. Someone said, and Republicans are also biased against Dems. Get real. No, here's the thing. The Republicans are biased against him. They're biased against him. They have been for a long time. He's not going to conform. Based on his own admission, he's not going to conform to Republicans and to this simplistic way of thinking that they've been exhibiting for so long in office. Someone said, who are we talking about? You're going to have to go back and watch from the beginning of the video over. I'm not going to keep going back. Someone said, my ex deployed as a contractor to Kuwait under Operation Iraqi Freedom. At least that was the name, someone said. Someone else said you will not get your file for months. Yeah, is that why they waited this long? This FOIA request was dated, what, July 11th? And they just released this information on the 21st? So you're telling me the AP sat on this story? Such a big story. They sat on it the day before the absentee ballots went out for active duty military? Come on, guys. Pay attention. People have to pay attention. And it's sad. It's sad that so many people don't care. So many people, even in this chat, so many people didn't care. So many people were talking about stolen valor and all that stuff without any cardinal knowledge of what actually transpired that day. And it's frightening. It's frightening. Someone said we got hazard pay and we're tax exempt in Turkey. Yeah, but isn't hazard pay and combat pay different? I don't know. But according to the one vet that I talked to who did 17 years in the military, he said that it's been a big problem because a lot of those people that were fueling out of Qatar, and he was in Afghanistan, a lot of those people that were coming out of Qatar, I keep saying Qatar, but I'm trying to say it the right way. A lot of the people that were flying out of there were landing, providing all the resources and stuff that they needed, and then leaving. They didn't get any combat pay for doing that trip because they weren't in country for 30 days. You know? Icy Bird said, I stand with Trump. Majewski is a punk. Trump only showed up for money. He even called him out. Are you fucking stupid? He's a Trump-endorsed candidate, you shithead. You're thinking about J.D. Vance, you stupid piece of garbage. Like, come on. Like, if you're going to make stupid statements, Icy Bird, Just actually fucking try to get your facts right. Get your facts right. Trump was calling out JD Vance. You know, call him, he's always on me. He wasn't calling out Majewski. I was at the rally. I know what Trump said. Trump endorsed Majewski early on his campaign, before the primary. That's the thing. That's the thing. People have to pay attention to what you're talking about. You're talking about made up shit. Like the news called JRJD yesterday. Yeah. And to be honest, you'd be hard pressed to find any actual quote where he said he was a combat veteran, because I don't believe I've ever seen a quote where he uses that term, combat veteran. It's a veteran for Congress. And are you trying to say that he's not a veteran now? Is that what people are trying to say? A lot of people say too, he got in a fight in the barracks or something, got a rank reduction. And a lot of people are trying to say, well, he was just a washout, blah, blah, blah. You're telling me that good soldiers don't lose their veteran status because they lost their rank before getting kicked out? Because I know someone that happened to, and he was a hell of a soldier. And anyone that wants to say shit about that dude, come at me, because he can't defend himself anymore. You know? Someone said, I do believe combat and hazard pay are separate. Obviously, you can get hazard pay without being in combat. Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know those two things. Icy Bird said, I always get ex-president twice impeached. He was never impeached. He was impeached by the House and then acquitted by the Senate. Like, and Icy Bird, why are you in the chat, dude? Like, why are you in the chat? You're just a troll. And it's fine. Like, you can troll all you want. If you're here to actually learn something or to listen and understand something, that's fine. But if you're in here just to stir shit, just go somewhere else. We don't want to take the time to ban you and do all that stuff. You'd be better suited going somewhere else. Like, if you actually want to have a conversation about something, have the conversation. Otherwise, fuck off. And I mean that nicely. I'm not trying to be mean about it. We need people to be nice about that kind of stuff. We're actually trying to have a conversation. Someone said hazard pay is for being in zone. Combat pay is on top of that for combat role. Got you. Someone said, I know people that got their gold stripes replaced with red due to actions. They are still good people. Someone said, I mean, he's released his paperwork. It says it's in classified deployments. I know, but they just people don't want to believe it. Derek Bishop said, I think it's NFAC in Austin. It's not the NFAC. It's not NFAC. And to me, that's a non-story. I see everybody tweeting out that and granted, they're marching around chanting reparations and all that shit. But imagine if they were all mute and they weren't saying shit, right? Would you still be offended by a bunch of people walking down the street carrying guns? If you would, or black people walking down the street carrying guns, and would you? And then let me ask the question: would you be offended if it was a bunch of white people walking down the street carrying guns? If you say no to the latter, then there's a word that can go to describe you. Icy Bird said, "Sorry for hurting your feelings. I thought you supported freedom of speech. I do. That's why we're not banning you, and you didn't hurt my feelings. What I want is for people that watch this show to actually be able to think rationally." To put away your biases, to put away the fact that you don't like Donald Trump, to put away the fact that you may be a crazy leftist, put away all that stuff and actually pay attention to what I'm saying. It's a truly, truly an enlightening experience if you do. And if you don't want to, then you're just as guilty as everybody else that you're out here chastising, which is, it is what it is, I guess. You know, that's the whole reason I do the show every day is for you, Icy Bird, and for people like you. Because maybe, just maybe, you will walk away from this with some new perspective on something. You know? I have no idea what you're talking about with some heifer bull crap. But that's it. That's all I wanted to talk about today during the show. I actually came into the office to talk about that because I was pissed. And I still am pissed, you know, but there's so many things wrong with this story. And the fact that, you know, right-leaning media hasn't gone batshit crazy over it. And some of the big talking heads on social media haven't gone batshit crazy over the fact that this is apparently an effort to undermine a MAGA Trump-endorsed candidate by the Republicans, which is frightening. You know, it's frightening that they'd rather have a Democrat in office than a Republican, you know? And I don't know, man. It's just, it's sad. Let me see what else is in the chat. Someone said, Echo Romeo 2 said, all real Marines have at least one NJP, non-judicial punishment. Yeah. There used to be a time when news was news. Now it's just somebody's opinion about the news. Sucks. Well, see, I presented the news in this one. You know, I presented the news and opinion, but I presented news and facts. That's a beauty. Anyone that has anything to dispute, go to J.R. Majewski on Twitter. Go look it up right now. He's provided evidence of every single, claim debunked. Every single one of them. And if you're still going out there saying the stolen valor and stuff, then one, your bias is getting the better, or two, you just don't care about facts. And which means that you're part of the problem with this country. You know? And that's it, man. I appreciate everyone for watching. I'm still trying to debate if I should go out to that rally next week. It's a bit further than some of the other ones. So if you guys want me to go out to that rally, I know the internet yesterday was horrible. I did record the whole interview, and I'll do editing and put out the interviews tomorrow. But if you guys think that you want me to go out there, continue supporting, send cash apps, Venmos, whatever you do. The cash app is Freight Broker Live, all one word. Venmo is Steve Oatley. We use that to fund our travel. If there's any other different events or stuff that you want me to go, I'm going to try to go to as many different events as I can. I don't like doing it, but I feel like nobody else is going to do it the right way. So I'm going to do it. And Lisa Kelly said there's another podcaster I follow that's going to do a show on him tonight and won't be positive he doesn't like him at all. Yeah, but again, it's facts. It's facts. But what I would say is just go to his Twitter page if you don't believe it. Go to his Twitter page. Anyway, puretruthcoffee.com. All the best coffee, all the best apparel, everything. That's how we do this. So if you like this show, send a super chat. Do whatever you can. There's 500 of you watching right now. It helps. Imagine if 500 of you did $5 each. It would keep us awake and afloat for a month. True story.